Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you've never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago? To see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses from the vats, and licked the soup from the cooks on the ladles, split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests of the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking to think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find in the furry civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, find the remedy we are lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this, the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a gilder eyed my ermine gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my brain head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door, but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little to wonder his fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long opened oyster, save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous, for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek nor beard on chin. What lips or smile went out and in, there was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table, "And please, your honour," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm, to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat of self-same check, and at scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yes," said he, "Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fled the Cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam, of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" 50,000 was the expectation of the Scotch Mayor Corporation. Into the sweet rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, grey rats, tawny rats, brave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who, stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses gripe, and moving away pickle tub boards, leaving a jar of ponds and covers, and drawing corks of train oil flasks, and breaking the butter casks. It seemed as if the boys smeared hard by solitary pleas, called out, "Oh, rats, rejoice! The world has grown to a vast risaltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your gunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone. Gracious, scarce an inch before me, just methought it said, come bore me. I found the Weser rolling over me. You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells, they rock the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats. When suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, the first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too. For council dinners made rare havoc with claret, moselle, vin de gras pop, and half the money would replenish their seller's biggest bud of Rhenish. To pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, in matter of money to put in your coat. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, was a joke. Besides, the losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face found, he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside. I promise to visit by dinner time Baghdad, and accept the prime of the head cook's pottage. All he's rich in, for having left in the caliph's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions, no survivor. With him I prove no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll bait a stiver. And folks who put me in a passion may find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture piebald? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane. And ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling, a merry crowd justling, a pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wood shoes clattering, little hands clapping, and little tongues chattering. And like foals in the farmyard with barley is scattering, out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping round merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if they're changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, till the children merrily skipping by could only follow with an eye the joyous crowd on the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street, where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. However, he turned from south to west, and to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed, great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, his force let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced and the children followed. And when all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No one was lame, and could not dance a whole of the way. And in after years, if you blame his sadness, he was used to say, is dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. Before he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town and jest at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers were forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was bred a peacock here, and their dogs outran our fallow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagles' wings. And just as I became assured, my lame foot we speedily cured. The music stopped, and I stood still, found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamlet, there came into many a burdened fate, a text which says that heaven's gate opes the richer as he is great, as the needle's eye takes a candle in. The mayor said east, west, north, and south, called to the piper by word of mouth, wherever was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw it was lost endeavor, piper and dancer were gone forever. They made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, the better memory fits the place of the children's last retreat. They called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper tamer was sure for his future lose his labor, nor suffered the hostelry or tavern, shop with worth the street so solemn, and opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say, in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison into which they were Japan a long time ago in a mighty band, out of Hamlin towns in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats, from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save to waylay with his lies and stare all travelers who might find him posted there? And ask the road, I guessed what skull like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside into ominous track which all agree hides in our power, yet acquiescingly I did turn as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness of end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heart made, finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels begin and end the tears, and takes a farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw a breath, freely or outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discuss if near other graves be room enough for this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with care about banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so oft be writ, so many times among the band to wit, the knights who to dark tower search addressed their steps, the gist to fail as they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red leer to see the plain catch its astray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after a pace or two, then pausing throw backward a last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, great plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved ignoble nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove. But chortle and spurge, according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You'd think a burr had been a treasure trove. No penury inertness ingrimates in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly. In nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine its clods and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous else. What made the holes and rents in the dog's harsh swarth leaves? Bruised as to balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passion their life out with the brute's intents. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair and leprosy. Thin dry blades pricked the mud which underneath looked kneaded up with blood. One stiff blind horse, as every bone is stare, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red gaunt and calloped neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart. As a man calls for wine before he fights, I asked one draught of earlier, happier sights. Ere fitly I could hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterward, the soldier's art. One taste of all times, that's all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's rending face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt them fold. An arm in mine fixed me to that place. That way he knew. Alas, one night's disgrace. Oh, at my heart threw fire and left it cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands. Frank as 10 years ago, when knighted first. An honest man today, said he durst. Good with the scene shifts. Fought when hangman's hand pinned to his breast the parchment. His own band reads it. Poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present than a past like that. Back therefore to my darkening path. No sound, no sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howler or a badass? When something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the glooms. This, as it frothed by, might have been a bath of the fiend's glowing doom. To see the wrath with black eddies be spat with flakes and spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rough despair. The suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no way. Which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. Each step revealed a spear I thrust to seek, for hollows tangled in his hair or beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who are the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poisoned tank, or wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Bruit set to work their brains, no doubt, like galley slaves the Turk pits for his pastime Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for? That wheel, or brake, not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of Coffin's tool, on earth left unaware, or brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stub ground, once wood, next a marsh it would seem, now mere earth, desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, until his mood changes, and off he goes, within a rude bog, clay and marsh, sand and stark black dirt. Now blotches rankling colored gay and grim, now patches where some leanness of the soils broke into moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsied oak, a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it recoils. As far as ever from the end, not to the distance but the evening not, to point my footsteps further at the thought, great black bird, Apollyon's bosom friend, sailed past Nerita's wide wings dragon pen, that brushed my cap to chance the guide I sought. From looking up to where I somehow grew, plain a given place all round the mountains with such names to grace mere heights and heaps now stolen in view, how thus they surprised me, solved at you, how to get from there was no clearer case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click as when the trap shuts you're in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls locked horn in fight, while to the left a tall scalp mountain, dunce doddered a dozing at the very nunce, after a lifetime of training for the sight. What in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, blind as a fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest's mocking elf points the shipman thus to the unseen shelf he strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why day came back for that. Behind it left the dying sunset, kindled through a cleft. The hills like two giants in the hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay, now stabbing in the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers my peers, how such was strong and such was bold, and such was fortunate yet each of old, lost, one moment knelled the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless, a slughorn to my lips I set and blew. Child Roland to a dark tower came. There was once a young man named Roland Pide who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking, when suddenly he spied a corpse laying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put his recorder on the ground, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead body in stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed that day. From that day on, Roland Pide was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired, then he would pull out his recorder while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pide lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame, so he devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland Pide was a good worker but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Roland Pide therefore took his recorder and left his home behind. When he came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep his body and soul together. "Come along with me," said the old man. We will share alms." So Roland Pide and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, stand where your feet are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland Pide they said, "Why is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pide. "That's what you say. There is a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pide went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been baked in before. Roland Pide mixed the dough, rolled it into rings. Then he boiled it, dressed it with seeds, and baked it until it was golden brown. Then he tossed it into a crate to cool down. Whenever he wearied of baking, he would play his recorder. And whenever he became once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are. Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pide and fell in love with him. But she was a princess and he a baker, and the king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. Roland Pide. They fled at night in a boat. They fled in a boat at night. They fled at night in a boat. They were already on the high seas when Roland Pide remembered the old man, the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man, since he shared his alms with me. We can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I owned. Now you have the king's daughter, and must give half of her to me." At this, he gave Roland Pide a knife to cut his bride in half. Roland Pide took the knife in his hand, Roland Pide took the knife in a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in two, when suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop! Stop! I knew you were a just man. I am the dead body, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves, and the boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the couple. With a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. That's the first time I've told that story. I need to practice it a little bit more. It's called Roland Pide and the Oven Blade. Beauty of woman and a wise heart's words, and men-at-arms and their nobility, the colloquies of love, the psalms of birds, and handsome ships running on the fast-running sea, the calmness of air as daybreak looms, white snow falling on a windless day. A flowing brook, a meadow full of blooms, silver and gold and lapis in array.